Rachel and Matt Hopkins are about to welcome their first baby, which makes this a terrible moment to go on a road trip across completely isolated areas, I know. But the Hopkins are just not very bright. And of course, they end up crashing right after a roadblock forces Matt to improvise his route. Now the car won't start and they don't even know exactly where they are. Matt climbs a tree trying to get some signal, and from there he sees a farm. It's about half a mile away, so they decide to walk there. A creepy sign on the road warns them to keep out, but these two won't take any good advice. Not a soul has been in the eerie property until a vehicle approaches and we meet Bob Fairbairns. Extremely rude to the couple, he refuses to help until he sees the very pregnant Rachel and asks if it's a boy or a girl. They don't actually know yet, but Rachel's convinced that it's a boy and she says so. Bob's attitude is now totally changed. In a few seconds, he goes from serial killer to overjoyed grandpa, offering the Hopkins a nice meal and a warm bed. Better not take any chances with that baby boy on the way, right? They say they only want to use the phone, but he's sorry to inform them that the storm blew down all the lines. As you can see, the red flags are popping out like ads on a free website, but the Hopkins ignore them and get in the car. Bob's driving them to the house when Rachel sees someone. It's an extremely weird-looking girl in black, just standing by the road and staring at them like only a haunted doll would. And once they arrive and meet the rest of the Fairbairns, it seems like they're all trying to look alive. Agnes sounds as overly excited as Bob about the baby, while their sons, Luke and David, are not very familiar with the concept of small talk, or human beings in general. At the guest room, Rachel repeats they just need to find a working phone somewhere. With the sweetest voice she can manage, Agnes firmly rejects the idea. It's way too late to go knocking on doors in their condition, and they can find a phone tomorrow. As soon as she leaves, Matt starts to laugh and says the whole thing feels like the Twilight Zone. Rachel points out that none of their kids look like each other. She also mentions the one she saw in the woods. Matt didn't see that girl, but he agrees that this place is bizarre, and they must leave first thing in the morning. Eavesdropping from the corridor, Agnes is not happy to hear that. When they come downstairs, they see the table set for a formal dinner in the wrong century. Agnes is happy to recite every part of the 4-course meal, making sure to let them know the lamb is freshly slaughtered just for them, while she is ignoring the female guests to serve all the men first. Some of the family pictures catch Rachel's eye. She asks about the girl in the picture, and they say that's their daughter, Faith. She won't be joining them for dinner tonight. She's a difficult child because her biological parents were filthy sinners. The trauma made her virtually mute and not very keen on socializing at all. Agnes then reveals that David and Luke are also adopted. God didn't give her the gift of childbirth because he had bigger plans. Whatever you say, Granny. After dinner, the Hopkins go back to the relative safety of their room. Now their jokes are turning to actual concern, as it's so painfully obvious that these people would never qualify for adoption. It's almost as if these pairs of psychos have been collecting other people's children. On top of that, there's something about the girl. She looks very familiar to Rachel. She just can't remember where she's seen her before. Somehow, they manage to fall asleep, but Rachel has a terrible nightmare and wakes up in a panic. She realized who that girl really is. Her name is Ellie Adams, and her entire family went missing a few years ago. The story was all over the news. Matt starts to say that it could be just her pregnancy brain talking, but he can see he might get punched in the face if he finishes that sentence. So he makes the wise decision to listen to her. They tiptoe to the front door, only to find it locked. Trying to find some of the keys, Matt drops one on the floor in a very inconveniently loud way. Soon, Bob is right behind them and he sees they've opened the door. Matt goes for a diplomatic exit and says they really need to get going. It looks like Bob will let them, but that's only because David and Luke are waiting outside with their shotguns. Rachel says they managed to send out a text. People know where they are and they'll come looking. Agnes smiles at such a cute lie, delighted to see that her water just broke. Then Matt and Rachel are knocked unconscious. When Rachel wakes up, she's in labor and her right hand is chained to the bed. Agnes is by her side, telling her in a soft voice that Matt has gone to a better place. She's also kind enough to let her know that her baby will be named Jacob. Out in the fields, the Fairbairns boys are digging a grave for Matt. Luke starts to wonder what his actual parents look like, and David doesn't like that kind of talk. But we soon see that not even David is as obedient as their mama may think. Ignoring her previous orders, they take Matt's clothes to wear in the fields when she isn't looking, and they haven't even sent Matt to that better place she was talking about. In fact, when Luke is about to do that, David has a little sadistic idea. He tells his brother to put him in the wooden box alive. Luke throws in Matt's smokes as part of the joke, so the poor man can have a cigarette before suffocating, and they both laugh, like the total little psychopaths they are. Now the baby has arrived. Very disappointed to see it's a girl, Agnes takes it out on the birth mother. Only a shameless sinner would have deceived such a nice family like that. But she still takes the baby away and doesn't let Rachel see her little girl. A few minutes later, Rachel breaks free. She goes back to bed when she hears someone coming. It's Agnes, and she seems calmer now. After a private talk to God, he seems to have explained that the gender fiasco is yet another test she must endure. Rachel can't stand it any longer and hits the psycho in the head with a crucifix. Not a good idea, because they become more careful and also tie her ankles this time. They take her to a shed next to the main house. The boys hold her down so that Agnes can get some milk for the baby. Inside the wooden box, Matt is slowly realizing what they've done to him. At least he's not in the dark, because Luke was dumb enough to leave the lighter inside the pack of cigarettes. After a brief moment of pure despair, Matt starts to kill his way out until finally emerging, all covered in mud. As the grave had been carefully placed a bit farther from the Fairbairns farm, Matt is now lost, yelling hello at a vast nothing. After having some water from a stream, he sees a sweater caught in some branches and improvises a skirt. In the shed, Rachel's at her limit of strength. That's exactly when a visitor stops by, and thankfully it's not one of the murderous freaks. It's Ellie, the girl whose family was probably finished off by the Fairbairns. Rachel wakes up in a surge of hope and quickly grabs a bite. She tells Ellie how deeply sorry she is about what happened to her. If they could only help each other, then maybe there could be a way out for both of them. Ellie doesn't say a single word and simply walks away as Rachel cries for her to come back. Empowered by his new look, Matt covers more ground and seems to have left behind the farmers from hell. His heart is warmed by hope at the sound of laughter. But wait, what if it's the Fairbairns boys? No, that was actual laughter. They're not physically capable of that. It turns out the noise was coming from two guys who were camping in the area. Looking at Matt, they find the situation hilarious at first, but then he starts talking about guns and hostages, insisting that he needs their phone. It seems that Matt never learned his lesson about not forcing the hand of strangers into kindness. He keeps repeating that his wife is in danger and they must at least lend him some clothes. Now he lost them completely. They're sure he's some kind of performative con man. Matt has no time to be reasonable. He has a baby on the way, so he decides to assault the taller guy first, while the other one patiently waits for his turn. Then he ties them up and steals some clothes before packing a nice bag full of useful stuff. Matt explains that now he's their best chance to get help before it's dark. They are suddenly more motivated to give him the right directions. Meanwhile, Rachel is being milked again. Complaining about the amount, Agnes says that if she can't feed the baby, she's of no use to them. Matt finds himself right where the nightmare started, but instead of walking to the main road to find help, he makes a grotesquely stupid decision and sneaks back into the place he has just escaped. To save his wife, of course. He probably believes he has a better chance to succeed than, say, a SWAT team. Inside the house, the conversation David and Luke are having with their mother is even more awkward than usual. Behind them, Ellie tries to play with the baby's music box. She immediately stops at Agnes's puzzled look at her audacity. The boys are telling her about a great idea they just had. One of them could get Rachel pregnant. Maybe this time it's a boy. Agnes is shocked and disgusted at such filth and kicks them out of the room. Then she shakes her head in disbelief, probably thinking, what could I have done wrong with these boys? Outside, the brothers have a brief chat about the incident. They decide to go ahead anyway and just keep it a secret. But it must be right now because Rachel won't last much. Hiding behind the tractor, Matt can hear their plan. He follows them to the shed with a little help from Ellie. Grabbing a heavy pipe, Matt then drastically reduces the number of members of the Fairbairns family. Inside the house, Agnes is talking to herself, still disturbed by what her sons were thinking. The sound of Matt hitting the chains is very faint from where she is, but Agnes has more than enough reason to be paranoid. Ellie does her best to distract them, but Bob decides to go check. Matt has just freed his wife, but she doesn't want to leave without the baby. So he carefully explains that they don't stand a chance against these crazy people, and the right thing to do is to get back to the main road and find help. It's not clear if Matt is admitting his own mistake here, or maybe he's just not that fond of babies after all. Anyway, we'll never know, because the moment he steps out of the shed, he's greeted by a bullet. Rachel is knocked unconscious again, and this time, she knows that Matt is really gone. The sound of the baby crying wakes her up sometime later. Ellie's also there now, working on her own chains. They must have figured out she helped them. Rachel musters all the strength she has left and starts to help the girl. In the dining room, even Bob is a bit caught off guard by the sight of Agnes grooming the two boys. She talks to them as if they were still alive and tends to their wounds as if they could heal. He says they must bury them, and she gets hysterical to hear that. But this is not Bob's first rodeo. He has the God card to play. Can't keep the Lord waiting for the boys. Agnes cries and yells, but can't argue with that. Luke and David are buried next to a mysterious third cross. Agnes is so devastated that she starts to doubt God's decisions and refuses to get back in the house. Bob says they've been there for hours now. What about the baby? Agnes scoffs and says it was the same when Faith arrived. Bob swears she is his only love and no other girl will ever come between them. What a pair. Back in the shed, that brick finally pops off. After a quick stop by the toolbox to get rid of the chains and grab a knife, the ladies sneak back into the house and follow the baby sounds. But now they also hear the car coming. And to make things worse, the baby starts to cry her little lungs out. Bob's inside the house now and would easily notice if that sound started to shift weirdly around the house. So when he gets upstairs, the baby is in the crib. He grabs the breast pump and leaves again, giving Rachel and Ellie a chance to come back out. Soon, they hear Bob coming out of the shed and yelling furiously. Getting the shotgun, he comes back inside. Rachel is trying a different approach now. She promises to do what she's told from now on. All she cares about is that baby, and all she's asking for is a chance to become part of the family. Bob doesn't fall for the whole act right away, but gets close enough, dropping the bundle of blankets, which was never a baby. Rachel makes her move. One less Fairbairns to worry about. Frantically searching his pockets, Rachel miraculously finds a working phone and calls the cops. She gives them the name of the farm and some directions before the call breaks up. Now, Agnes is standing outside the house with a shotgun. By the look on her face, she's figured out most of what just happened. Rachel gets a shotgun for her too and grabs the baby. Coming down the stairs, she can hear Agnes driving the tractor for some reason. It looks like she's leaving, so they quickly get into Bob's car but can't find the keys. That's when they see Agnes coming from behind them. It's time for the duel of the mothers, ladies and gentlemen. They do fire at each other a couple times, but it soon becomes obvious that they just suck at this.
Ellie, run!
So they switch to MMA for a second there, before Rachel has a chance to let all her fury out. Stumbling toward the front gate, Rachel hears the merciful sound of police sirens. She's surrounded by paramedics, and it seems it's all over. But good old Mrs. Psycho is back up and taking aim. She must have missed the entire team of trained policemen all over the property. They take her out immediately, and we see Ellie smile for the first time. Then one of the cops asks where they can find Ellie Adams. Rachel is confused and tells him that she's right there, but she's not really there, and she never was. Rachel finally realizes that no one ever talked to Ellie directly or acknowledged her presence in any way. Do you remember that puzzled look in Agnes's face when the music box started on its own? Or when a jar suddenly fell off a table as if knocked over by a ghost? That's because no one else could see the girl's ghost haunting the farm. No one but Rachel. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2018 movie Matriarch by New Light Films, starring Scott Vickers and Charlie Blackwood. So what do you think was their biggest mistake? What would you have done in their shoes? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.